everybody. Welcome back to Real Progress in Action. I am Matt Stueck. I have a special guest with me again, the return of Sara, the therapist. How are you doing? I don't know what week this is in the pandemic, in pandemic time. How are you doing so far handling the pandemic?
Wonderful. Just keeping busy, keeping busy with my clients, and just, I don't even know what week it is either.
Well, last time we went over many different mental issues and worries, and you gave some tips to me. So I thought I could tell you how they worked for me, and how maybe we can sort of come up with some new ones if these weren't so successful. So last time you said, which I did do, you said, if you're really anxious and you're really worrying a lot, you really need to create a worry list. So everybody out there, if you're having, and there is so much going on, right? Bernie dropped out of the race. Everybody's worried about that. It's a whole new stress level for Bernie people. Obviously, the pandemic continues, job loss, just so much pressure. And then everybody has their own family drama going on that we really can't always reveal on here, but everybody has their dramas going on. So you told me, make sure if thoughts are bothering you and you worry, take a time to write down your worries, and that way it'll exit your head and you'll be able to see it on paper and maybe calm yourself down a bit. And I would say to you that the worry list for me did work, but I have to almost, like you said, schedule a time for the worry list maybe every week. Maybe I have to make sure, is my worry list done? Because I think, again, you said create habits or schedule, and I think sometimes I lose focus and I don't do it. Like oh, I don't have a pen. Oh, I don't have paper. Oh, I don't want to put it on my phone. Oh, this worry list is making me more worried. Like you get places. So again, I love the worry list. Is there any other workarounds we can for people like me with the worry list?
And that's where scheduling the time is helpful, because you do have to take that time, maybe even before bed, to actually make a list, because I think it does help to be able to say, okay, when I got up in the morning too, it's a tangible thing to be able to say, I can cross that off my list. I'm not worried about that anymore. It makes us feel like we maybe accomplish something when we are able to cross something off. Even if it means I need to talk to my loved one about this topic because I'm stressing about this. It can be as simple as walking my dog. It can be something very simple as be sure to tell my children that they need to brush their teeth in the morning, because we're all on we're all up our routines. They might be forgetting to brush their teeth. It can be very simple things, but when you get the opportunity to cross it off your list, you feel like you accomplished something. So it's a very big thing to be able to know that you made a list, you crossed something off, you got something done.
I think the bigger issue with the worry list is getting your loved ones maybe to create one too. You don't want to put pressure on them, but it would really help if they would write their worry list, and so that you knew what was going on in their mind. Because again, we all can't read each other's minds. If we don't see their worry list in black and white and take a look at it, oh wait, what does this one mean again? And I think that's another weird pressure to put on someone, but I think it's important, right?
That's right. And a lot of times too, I do encourage people. I mean, we do have a lot on our walls, but a lot of times if we have like a whiteboard on our walls, if we each have our own spot, we can have our own designated area where we write things down. It reminds us to actually have communication with each other, because we do forget. A lot of times we're all in our own rooms, we're all in our own space. We don't talk to each other, and that communication is so key and it's so important.
I'm just curious. So you're a family therapist. Do you do couples, or do whole families come in? I mean, how does it? Is it separate? Is it just one person? Is it couples, or the whole family walks in? How does it work as a family?
So as a family therapist, a lot of people think that it just is strictly families. I work with individuals, I work with couples, I work with whole families, but family therapy can happen with just one person as well. And people don't imagine that that's possible, but a lot of times what we do is we take the perspective of a whole family unit, but with just one person, and we'll just bring like figuratively the whole family into session. We'll say, okay, well, how do you think, your mom would feel about that? And so we really kind of take the whole family's perspective into the session. And we, especially if there's a lot of conflict, and we try to help that person from the family perspective.
Okay, Sarah, the therapist. The other tip that you gave me that I took, that we talked about, which I was aware of, but I figured I would try it out, is I did go out and purchase the weighted blanket,
Oh,
but
wonderful.
I forgot that I don't like to cuddle. So the weighted blanket just feels like I'm constantly being cuddled, and it didn't really help. I'm still working with it, but as soon as I was like, oh my God, I forgot. I don't like this sensation of being cuddled. It feels bad, but I want to work with it. So everybody out there, if you get a weighted blanket and it doesn't work out for you, you can use it as an exercise tool. You can do push-ups while it's on your back, and it helps you stretch. So it's not a complete waste of money, the weighted blanket, but I still need to work with it. So I don't know if you have any other tips, though. I'm still having trouble. See, I believe I'm going through the steps of grief with the pandemic, just dealing with the pandemic. I was going through steps of grief, I think. And now with Bernie dropping out, I'm going through another steps of grief. So I think my steps of grief might be overlapping. And then, people are getting COVID-19. I'm dealing with that. So I have like many levels of, I think, going through different stages of grief.
And don't deny those stages. I think I tell people all the time, I'm like, you are going to go through the different stages of grief. You're going to experience anger. You're going to experience bargaining. You're going to experience all those stages. And you have to allow yourself to go through them. A lot of times people will say, oh, well, no, I'm just not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that. Nope, you have to go through it. We don't just not do that. We don't skip it. We have to go through it. So we're going to experience the anger, and we're going to experience the sadness. We're going to experience the bargaining. We're going to experience all those things, and that's typical. That's normal, and it's okay. And with the weighted blanket, I would suggest too is if you're experiencing a panic attack during the day, then if you don't like the cuddle, like if you don't like to use it at night, if you need to find yourself if you find yourself in a panic attack during the day, then I would suggest maybe putting it over your legs on the couch and just putting on something relaxing and just using it then. That's a great way to relax during the day. But I probably would not suggest then using it at night.
But that's a really good idea. So I didn't think about that. That if I'm having a panic attack, maybe just draping it around my shoulders. You just try different ways. So maybe if I just drape it around my shoulders, maybe it'll do something. Or we'll give it a shot.
That's right.
So then I was thinking further, and I don't know if this is your area of expertise, but the thing that concerns me too now during this pandemic is, so if people are really struggling in two different ways, let's say someone is feeling suicidal, or let's say someone really believes that they're maybe suffering from depression, how are they going to go about getting maybe a prescription right now? It might be difficult. I would assume that might be a problem. How do you address both those issues, actually trying to see a psychiatrist and maybe thinking that you need to take something, and on another level, if they're feeling suicidal?
So a lot of psychiatrists are seeing clients through telehealth as well. So and so I'll make referrals directly through straight to a psychiatrist so that people can see them, and then they'll actually set up something through telehealth to be able to see them. So it works out great. And then something will be sent to the pharmacy directly.
And I think, again, knowing this from having a family history, when you go on a psychotropic, though, then another issue comes in when you have to go get blood work done to see where your levels are. So that might be another, stressful, anxiety-inducing. But a lot of people need to know, if you do take some sort of prescription, you're going to probably have to have your levels checked every 3 months. So just be aware before you decide you don't want to just get a weighted blanket and be done with it. You want to go with psychotropics. Just be aware that you may have to do blood testing every 3 months to maintain your levels.
Yeah,
So.
and we say to clients, the best thing to do for yourself if you have anxiety or depression is the combination of medication with talk therapy. That's usually the best, because medication can do so much in helping, particularly with if our serotonin level is low. But what I'm noticing is that it's not helping the things we need to work out that just are underlying that we're not working out, that tend to creep back.
So last time we did discuss people having suicidal thoughts, that there was an 800 number, correct?
Yes, there's usually a hotline that people can typically call, and we can call this hotline and they can talk you through your suicidal thoughts, or they can give you advice on where to go if you're having suicidal thoughts.
I think even better is, I happen to know, I called the line for a friend, and
Mhm.
you can also do chat. You don't
Yep,
have to talk to someone. So
right.
when I did it, I had to wait. I was on a waiting list. You're on a waiting list for 8 people, and then you get closer, and then you have to be sort of descriptive about who you are and where you live, and then they'll put you on. And I just had a quick chat with somebody, and they actually gave me just a number in my area for counseling, and I just took that. So it does work, though. Again, it got to be patient. You probably should get into a place where you are calm, and trying to find a place, a calm spot. You're gonna have to wait a little bit, but they will help you if you're having those kind of suicidal thoughts. Um, I also wondered, now that I know you do family therapy, and I don't know if you can answer this, but I would assume, I don't know. Again, the reason why I asked you is I don't know exactly where we are in the quarantine. I mean, obviously your shelter place probably is a different timeline than New York City or New York State. But I'm just wondering if you see a rise in tension in relationships because everybody is sheltering at home and they can't, like, get away, take a walk, or go to work, or have some time by themselves. I don't know if you're seeing, or you can talk to that
Uh,
problem.
yes, I am seeing a lot of my own personal clients. I'm seeing a lot of them are getting stressed because they're all stuck in the house together. So there's a lot of tension surrounding the relationships, and I'm getting a lot more texts from my clients saying, can I meet with you, can I see you again this week, just because there's a lot of arguing going on in the homes.
And so what is your, so now, we did the worry list, we did weighted blankets, we've talked about the hotline, we've talked about prescription drugs, but for people who are in couples who are sheltered in place, what have you seen anything work? Have you given any suggestions that someone said, came back to you and said this works? Do you know of anything that may actually work for people who are sheltered or quarantined together?
I suggest that people take breaks from each other, like go for a drive, because in the car you can be separated from each other. So one person take a break. If you're experiencing tension with your partner, I just suggest taking a break, because when you're having that tension, there's no point in staying right there, and just allowing that tension to rise. And then when you're both kind of calm down, take the time to talk to each other, and acknowledge that you're both kind of under stress too, because I think that's important too. You are both under stress, so own what you're both feeling.
I just figure now is if people are, thinking about separation or divorce, and they've been talking about for a while, now they're locked down with each other. I just worry about situations like that. So the other, I guess, because I know you're in the same boat, the other depressing event that took place, because I don't think we've talked since then, is Bernie dropping out of the presidential race. And I know that you are a Bernie fan. I don't think I am saying anything that's out of school. So how is that affecting you, as far as knowing that he suspended his campaign, but just knowing that he's backed off a little bit from pursuing the presidency of the United States?
That was really depressing, and so that has probably been extremely bothersome to me, just because I was supportive of all his policies, and everything he was fighting for. So that's been extremely worrisome, because particularly what's going on in the world right now, with 17 million jobs lost, and and everything. And then we have Joe Biden, who's the Democratic nominee, and now we have he's not even worried about Medicare for all. And there's most of our jobs are tied to our jobs, or most of our healthcare is tied to our jobs. So we are in a pretty poor situation right now.
And it's a weird place to be in. I think, again, I'm asking you from both places, from being a therapist, but also just being a human and being a Bernie supporter. It's, again, all of this during the pandemic is really heightening everything, because if you know somebody who has contracted the virus and it's close, you know the symptoms. This is a really hideous virus. It comes in, it attacks your lungs, you can't breathe, they put oxygen on your face. If they can't get you breathing, they're gonna have to intubate you, which I guess is gonna putting you out, sticking a tube down your throat. People don't realize it, and then they're breathing for you. But it's, you know, it's one of those issues that we know probably people are having sort of these symptoms every day with without health insurance, have no coverage, and they're just racking up these bills. And for people to not, again, and I guess this is, you know, I saw this thing about a veteran, veterinarian the other day, and she talked about how she has compassion fatigue at the end of the day, which I'm sure you may also suffer from as well. But it really is upsetting, because I'm like, this is really about who we are as people. This is really a compassion problem. This is really an empathy problem. And we know where the Republicans stand, and then you know where the moderates stand, and you know some people are just not paying attention. And then you have the Bernie supporters who feel like they've got it all on their shoulders. They've got to get the word out to everybody. And I don't know. I mean, from a therapist side, how do you process all of it? Because you sort of know the human condition better than anybody else. How do you process what is going on in the United States of America? It's almost too much for me to process. So if you can help me process it.
It is infuriating, because I think that's where, you know, you talk about ranting, going on your rants here. I do the same thing. I go on my rants on Facebook, not live, obviously. Maybe this will be my new outlet. I'm not sure, but I literally go on my rants on Facebook because I do get mad, and I do talk about, like, in my job, I see it. I see people struggling, and I'm, you know, working in the human services field. I see the struggles, and I see how real people live, and it's so infuriating to me that, you know, austerity kills. I mean, and there's 68,000 people who die every year from not having health care, and this is okay with so many millions of people. This is okay.
Well, I want to go into a funny, weird area, and I don't know where this is going to go, but this is going to turn into a little bit of a therapy session right now. So you'll get a little background of who I am, just real briefly. So in high school, if there's a Breakfast Club definition of me, I was probably a dumb jock. I played soccer. I hung around with the kids who were more sort of, I want to say, they're more involved with the school government. People that were probably, I shouldn't be hanging. They were smarter than me. They were going places. You know, somehow I got into that group of friends who had it going together. And I'm just a middle class kid, white kid from the suburbs. And I didn't know really how to make friends or keep friends. So I've never really had a lot of friends in my life. So I was in this group mostly because my girlfriend was in the group. Once we broke up, I sort of never really, I lost those friends as I, went on with my life. Well, maybe a night ago or 2 nights ago, we had a Zoom call with all of them there. And as I'm talking, I'm trying to be funny and nice. But growing up, I always try to figure out what was going on with my high school friends. And I'm not saying all of them are like this, but something was creeping on me. And I said, Dad, I feel like I'm sensing white privilege. I feel like I'm sensing people who don't have to care about certain social issues because it's never going to touch them. And when you're on these Facebook arguments or flame wars, we call them, as a therapist, are you doing it because it's therapeutic, or do you think it actually can move the ball? Are you just, because I get into flame wars as a comic to sharpen my arguments. And I have to be honest, I actually used to get off on it. So, because it's like, it's being in comedy and you're battling, right? But as a therapist, is it because we're trying to relieve ourselves through some sort of therapeutic way? Or for you, as a therapist, a little, I would assume that like a comic, a couple of more tricks to maybe get into that psyche and maybe flip somebody like, what are you saying? What are you doing? How do you approach it? What's the right way to approach it?
I usually tend to use knowledge typically with them, but that I'm finding doesn't work because it just doesn't hit back, I guess. Most people don't care. You can use all the knowledge you have to try to hit back, but I do sometimes try to use psyche, reverse psychology sometimes or whatever, and just say, what if you were in that position? What would you do? Because most people, I think, don't look at the fact that I think it's more that's never going to happen to me, and they've never been in that position, and so it's that spot that they just they can't imagine that happening to them, and you're right, it's the lack of empathy.
And the thing that I worry about constantly is I live in a fairly progressive city. I live in New York City. But to me, it's not that progressive. So I've been trying again to reach out to different progressive groups to get involved. I don't know, you live in Minnesota. I'm not sure how progressive Minnesota is, but I'm always thinking about, oh my God, what about this person who lives in Kansas? Or what if this person who lives, I don't know, in Florida? I'm trying to think of the most conservative, I mean, and they're more Bernie supporters. And then sometimes I'll take that to like other countries in the world. My God, we actually do have it pretty good when you compare ourselves to other places in the world. But I always wonder about the isolation and for me, I'm in New York City. There's plenty of groups. I'm just being lazy basically. There's groups where I can go and find out. But somebody in a Kansas or an Arkansas or a Georgia, I would assume that's a lonely place to be in. And again, I guess your advice would be go out and find a group, but sometimes that's difficult to do. So again, that's actually put that on my worry list.
Yeah, no, and even where I am, I'm an hour outside of Minneapolis, and where I am, it is when people hear I'm a Bernie Sanders supporter, they're like, "What?" They think that is so far out of the ordinary. It is, particularly people around here.
So I would tell you that I've been reaching out to more groups and more people. I always have done this in the past through Facebook, whatever. I just randomly, if I think you look like you might be involved or you're in a group, I'll add people. And then today, I talked to a woman today who I thought was like going to be a progressive New York City resident. And all the issues I was bringing up, legalized marijuana, no. Bail reform, no. The only thing that she did care for was Medicare for all. So it's like, all right, I guess, that's important. So again, it's always mind-boggling to me that they'll only go to a certain area. And I know you're a supporter for Medicare for all, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
And is there any? Would you know the numbers in Minnesota and how it affects the population there as far as lack of healthcare?
Oh, I'm not sure about the numbers in Minnesota. I just know, like, even right now with the coronavirus, that you know, in the United States now, I mean, if you look at it, 17 million people have lost their jobs. So most of our healthcare is tied to our jobs. So now we don't have, there's so many people who don't have healthcare. So if any of those people were to get sick with coronavirus, they're going in for healthcare. These are bills they're going to have to pay once they're better, if they get better. That right there is scary. And I recently saw this report from this doctor, and he had said, the last thing this guy had said before he went on his ventilator was, "How am I going to pay for this?" That is the saddest thing to think about when you're going on a ventilator. Is I'm never going to be able to pay for this. And I get that all the time. People will stop therapy with me, and they'll say, "I have to catch up on my bill before I can continue therapy."
I was just thinking that speaks to the broader issue of Medicare for all that, again, people don't
Mhm.
seem to understand. If you
Yep.
don't have access to therapy, then, and again, everybody always says, oh my gosh, they're gonna run over the system's gonna be overloaded. It's actually probably the reverse of some of these people who really do need a therapist and just are too afraid of the cost and the ease. I mean, I'm still considering trying to do teletherapy. I'm hoping that this pandemic has really opened the field open to Zoom calls or whatever, because it would work for me much better. I'm one of those people who would do much better with, a Zoom call therapy than having to worry to go to the
Yeah.
office.
And, find a therapist too that you are comfortable with. If you find one that you just don't feel like you can talk to, find another one. Seriously, because you will find the right therapist that you feel like you can truly be open with, and it's going to feel right and great. And that's the key, is just finding the therapist that you can talk to.
But another one of my fears about actually going to see someone, I don't know if you said this last time we talked, is I want to make sure my therapist is a progressive. I don't want to go see. I don't want to. I mean, it sounds terrible, but I don't want to go see a conservative Republican. I don't want to go see a moderate Democrat. I have to know that this person is left of Bernie or a Bernie centric. So that's a
That,
fear. That's a worry that I actually have.
yeah. I think you can kind of sometimes figure that out, and sometimes it's in some of their bios too. It's particularly in the way that they who they're willing to counsel, because sometimes you will see people who, if they're theological in their views, and if they don't, if they won't state that they're willing to counsel bisexual, gay, transsexual couples, that might be a dead giveaway too sometimes, because my first job right out of college, or right out of my master's program, I did work with a company that was very theological in their views. And so anytime we had any couple that was more, I should say more, I maybe more progressive, they gave them to me, because I did not have any issues with that. So, now that I've opened my own business, for me, it was more, I'm open to seeing anybody.
What state were you? What state were you working? It was still Minnesota. It was.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I live in New York City. I feel like it's progressive, but then I talked to someone today, and I wasn't even aware that we just won back our state Senate to Democratic. So I was like, my God, I probably should have known something like that. But
Yeah.
again, I don't know what the political climate is in Minnesota. Did Bernie run there yet? Did you have your primary there yet, or
Yeah.
no?
And actually, in 2016, Bernie took our states, but then our then whoever was running then, it was, what's his face? I can't even remember his name, but he had a sexual issue too, and then he dropped it. He ended up stepping down. He was the guy in Saturday Night Live.
Oh, Al Franken.
Yes, Al Franken. So he was our senator then, and he decided that no, he wanted Hillary Clinton instead. So then for some reason this time, ironically, we did not go for Bernie. Our state did not, surprisingly enough, which I don't think is true. I think that our state, everybody I knew was going for Bernie. So
Cuomo's talking about how he used to be an altar boy. Kansas is pushing back on their governor. They're saying, no, the governor is wrong. We should be allowed to congregate. And this is always like a tough issue for me, because I was raised a Catholic, but I was never Catholic. And again, I feel like I need to go to therapy just because I was raised Catholic. And that must sound horrible to people, but I literally think that, I don't know how to explain it, but I truly believe that indoctrination works, because I feel it all the time. There is guilt that comes from religion, that comes from just being pounded with religion over and over since the time I was young.
I work with a lot of people who have that induced shame that comes with religion. A lot of that. Mm-hmm. So
I can imagine if you're gay or transsexual or bisexual, again, and we can go to other countries where it's way worse, right? I mean, again, we're sort of have some freedom here, but I always feel like pushing against religion is so taboo in this country. Everybody is walking on eggshells, and they're the ones out of everybody. I mean, obviously we see selfish lack of behavior modification across the United States, which is a whole other issue, right? You're just telling me that people really are selfish and they can't shelter at home, and they don't get that nurses are dying. but then you have the religious faction who is supposed to be the people that care the most about people.
That's right.
But then it turns out that's not so true. They care more about their relationship with God. And I just figured, like, talking to you, I just figured out. So they care more about their relationship with God than they do about.
That's right. And then you're gonna find so much more judgment in those people for you, toward you, than you are in general people out there who don't have that religious background.
It's really hard because all of this seems really illogical. You know, the two-party system seems illogical. What they did to Bernie Sanders in 2016 and 2020 seems illogical. I don't know if we talked. You know, it's so funny. I don't know if I told you this last time, but I have other people that want to do shows similar to this. And I had one guy that was really giving a problem. We were always sort of getting into it. And the other day he says, no, you don't get it. I have PTSD from 2016. I can't cope. I can't get back into this 2020 because of what this is a grown man, right? He's like, you know, he's always giving me crap back and forth. He's like, I have to be honest. I've never recovered from 2016. So now I feel like, oh my God, this is happening all again for, you know, because this woman we talked to yesterday, she just got in. She got into politics just after, you know, she got into 2016, but she wasn't super involved. But I was super involved in 2016, and now it's happened all over again in 2020. And I guess my issue is how do you, I would say, keep hopeful, keep optimistic? I mean, is that sort of your job that you have to, you're talking to your patients, you somehow have to, when they leave the office, hopefully you've got them in a certain direction where they're a little more optimistic and a little hopeful. But I don't know how you're able to do that as a Bernie Sanders person, and you've seen twice them rig this and go against the best possible candidate, and you saw all the tricks and everything, and now we have to be gaslit on Facebook and Twitter. It's almost too much to bear.
I have no patience for the people who are telling me to vote for Biden. I literally, that's when I want to lose my shit. But
yeah, I'm trying to get you there. I'm trying to get you there, sir. I need you to get away from that therapist and just rip off the
but I can honestly say that for me, I do stay positive in the fact that Bernie did start pretty much a revolution. And we have a huge party of people who are progressives, and we could start our own party if we wanted to. And I think I know people. There's a lot of people out there who are saying no, we can't do that. I really think we should. I kind of think that that's the route we should go, because there is no room for us in the Democratic Party. There is really no room for us. They are ignoring us. You know, and you really look at it on a chart. The Democratic Party is really more right. They're really on the right side of center. They're more Republican than anything. And they ignore progressive views, and they've really ignored us. And so I don't even know why any progressives run on the Democratic ticket. But I do understand, because it's the only way to get elected. But in the same token, we have to figure something out.
And you're right about the Democratic Party. I even think about Bernie, like when people say, well, what do you think Bernie would have got done? I was like, maybe he would have lowered prescription drug prices. I mean, maybe he would have put in a couple of things, you know, maybe he would have been a little keen on the environment. I'm very aware that he has to work with a very moderate conservative House of Republicans and a very
but it's even, what would it have cost him to even get into office? It would have cost nothing to abolish student debt. It would have cost nothing to really get rid of student debt for everybody. To be honest, it's just, it would have helped everybody.
Well, again, you study, you're on the Stephanie Kelton side, and you're aware of the MMT side, which is, again, something, what we're trying to do. When we go to find these progressive people like Doris, my producer, anonymous, she was able to talk to her after our show and said, you know, you should look into MMT, Stephanie Kelton, and she also gave they gave her the name of an individual who would come and speak at one of her forums. And I think that's another way to, again, move the ball so people can understand how we pay for things, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because, you know, when all of this happened, when we've come up with all this money to with this coronavirus, and to be able to figure out how to sustain people during this time with the coronavirus, nobody's asking how we're going to pay for it. Yet everybody has asked, every time we bring up Medicare for All, how we're going to pay for it. But yet nobody has asked how we're going to pay for it during this time where where we're helping corporations and we're giving everybody a $1,200 check. Nobody's asking that. Why isn't anybody asking that right now? When we were giving money to the wartime, every time we go to war, nobody's asking how we're going to pay for that. And that's what really infuriates me. We create dollar. We create the dollar. And I implore everybody to learn MMT, because we are capable of affording whatever we want to afford.
So I don't know if I already asked you in the beginning, but what is this could be Sarah's take or Sarah's the therapist take, so you can do both. So what is your gut on Bernie right now? Someone said, so what, because this is what you're going to get. This is what you get when you're out, and I don't know how you get, but when you're out in the regular world, people are like, so what about your boy Bernie? What happened there? Like, what, they always want to know, like, why did he drop out? What are you going to do now? I mean, but what do you feel about Bernie's decision? And what would you say to someone like that? And what did you personally feel? Like, was it a bad move? Did you understand why he did it, or are you confused?
I think Bernie did it because I think he was really perplexed as to why Joe Biden was pushing people to vote in Wisconsin when there was a pandemic going around. And so he decided, I can't encourage people to go out and vote when the DNC and Joe Biden are going to encourage people to go out and vote during a time like this. So I think for him, it was more of a safety issue. So he did not drop out. He suspended his campaign. And I think for him, he considered the safest thing to do at this point. I think it's a really good thing that he kept his name on the ballot. And I want to tell everybody that anybody still has a chance to vote for Bernie Sanders, to go ahead and do so in the primaries, to go ahead and vote for him and not give your vote to Biden. And yes, for anybody who says that it's a vote for Trump, fine. Because there's not much of a difference between Biden and Trump at this point.
So the other issue that I really, really do need therapy on, because I'm sure that I am pushing it back into my subconscious. It's hard because it's so maddening. So what happened in Wisconsin is we had the most dangerous election in our nation's history, and nobody's really talking about it. And the way it occurred, nobody's really talking about it. The governor waited late, and then he decided to postpone the election. The Republican legislature got the Supreme Court involved. They decided to screw the absentee. They were going to make everybody vote, and then somehow I don't know how it made the leap from the local Supreme Court to the highest Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, no, we're not postponing this. You're all going to have to go and vote during a pandemic. Now, my only take on that is the most evil fucking thing I have ever heard. I don't know if I've heard a more, in my modern life, I'm not sure if I've heard anything more evil than what just took place, because they put citizens at risk. And again, I don't know, I've been asking around. I've been going into Wisconsin, trying to watch local radio, trying to watch local news. I'm wondering, can we sue anybody? Is this a suable offense? Because obviously it's negligent. Obviously it's reckless endangerment. If you were a therapist, you would have to make a real tough call whether you're going to have those kids being taken care of that Supreme Court, right? If there was kids that were being raised by the Supreme Court, you'd be like, you know what? We're going to have to services. I got to call social services on the Supreme Court.
Yes.
Because that's maybe what I should do. Should I make a phone call to social services?
and be like, I'm worried about the endangerment of these people.
How it's am I going to have a psychotic break? What are they doing? I mean, it's too much.
I feel like I just feel like it's a situation where to them it was, to the Republicans it was a situation where they wanted Biden in, because they want Trump to debate Biden.
Well, it turned out, Sarah, it had nothing to do with Biden and Bernie. It had to do with a Supreme Court nominee election. That's why they wanted to have it. And so what they did was they suppressed the minority vote. Number one, they went through with the election, and they went from like 160. I'm jumping with the numbers. 160 voting areas to 5 in Milwaukee, where most of the minorities live. Plus, putting all the poll workers at risk, who are all probably, majority of them are over 65 years old. So again, this ruling didn't matter if you were Republican or independent or Democrat. They were literally putting your life on the line. And if you know anything about this virus, if you have anybody close to you who's gotten it and survived it, it is a hideous, horrendous virus you would not wish on your worst. I wouldn't even wish it on the Supreme Court.
Well, and the worst part is minorities are the ones who are voting for Bernie. And that was the same case in Texas. They closed all the minority area voting booths. So, for people who say that that it wasn't rigged, it was very much rigged. It was very much rigged. And I think that's where my anger comes in too, is that we're also finding that the disparities coming in with the people, poor people, and people of color are becoming the people who are dying too of coronavirus as well, because they can't afford healthcare or obviously healthy food. So they're the ones who are becoming subject to dying to the coronavirus more so than people who have been wealthy all their life.
And we can also extrapolate from there that they don't have access to mental health and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I don't know how a person, I actually would be honest with you, I was a little numb I felt numb this week. And I was saying to people, I think I'm getting numb to the number of people dying, which again, someone told me that in war, or if you're a nurse or somebody, you actually have to numb yourself. Like something has to switch. We're losing, and they say like 800 people a day in New York City. I believe it's actually 1,000 because some are dying at home, some are misdiagnosed, they're not getting tested. So we're probably losing 1,000 a day that just aren't being reported on.
That is insane. That's insane. I mean, that's too many.
Yeah, and I mean that's just based because Cuomo was talking about today that we only have 925,000 available beds. That's the max number. That's the max number of patients we can take. We only have 925,000 beds across America. So that's why they were so concerned that they didn't really want the exposure rate to go above that. They didn't tell us till later on, like why is everybody sheltering in place? Why do we need all these behavior modifications? Because they didn't have the beds. If it went over 1 million, we weren't going to be able to take care of people. And it really requires, I know because now I have somebody close, it requires, if you really have it bad, it's going to require you to get oxygen or intubated, or even during that, you're going to have to do some therapeutic treatments in the hospital, whether it be, drugs that are first time used, they're trial drugs that are like, you know what, let's just give it to them. If you don't get there, there's a good chance you're going to die. And I don't know what you do in Minnesota. I mean, how do you find progressive people? What do you do what do you do where you live to find groups that feel the way you feel? Are you involved with any groups there or?
For me, it's more or less reaching out to the people in the cities. I've been able, through Real Progressives, the group here, to be able to find people that I know in the cities, which is nice. That's probably the main way I've been in contact with people.
And how does it work for you? Because I mean, again, I know that you probably eventually felt like you had to become involved with Real Progressives because you must have reached a frustration level. Because I'm telling you, I try to go out there and study. Obviously, no mainstream media will talk about unionizing, and they won't talk about Medicare for all. That it might be a good idea. I mean, it's really amazing to watch how they manipulate, because they manipulate like better than Trump or better than the Democrats. Their manipulation is so much more skillful to me than the Democrats. The Democrats are sort of like, it's so obvious, and it's like, oh, with Trump, it's so obvious. But with the news, it's like who is scripting the whole country? It's mind-boggling. And so again, we do this, and you've decided to do this because it feels like there's no way to break through.
I think that's another fight we're having, is trying to help people to see that there are other places that are reputable, and that you don't have to go to the media sources, which are actually funded by the actual corporations that, fund our
It's funny
government.
that you say that, because I am trying to reach out to more alternative media. I too would look at the name of an article and where it came from. I'm like, well, I've never heard of that. Instead of just getting in there and seeing if they have some actual documentation. And I think you make a good point. I need to get over the hump. I've really been having issues where people are sending me stuff and I'm like, well, I've never heard, I don't know, a Jacob Mag, or I'm trying to think of some of the things like, Common Dream, whatever. There's so many of them, but you really have to start opening some of them and seeing just vetting them. So maybe to find a new news source. The other thing that's really, again, stressful is we have 27 more states to go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we're in the middle of a primary right now, during a pandemic, and the Supreme Court is involved, and it's the same. It's like we're going back to Gore Bush. The Supreme Court just got involved and made an incredible. And I'm telling you, nobody is talking about it. I actually was on Lee Camp's live stream. Lee Camp does a show called Redacted Tonight. He's one of the more progressive, successful. Yeah, he's probably like the most successful progressive infotainment, if you will, people that we have, right? So I was on his live stream, and I said to him, I said, and he pinned this onto his live stream. I said, Lee, I hope when you come back, you do a whole thing on what happened in Wisconsin. And you know what he said back to me? He said, might be out of the news cycle by then, by the time I go back next week and start taping. So I feel like I'm alone in this. No one is up in arms. Everybody's like, well, it happened. Wisconsin happened. And when you go to talk radio there, they're not talking about it. It's not an issue. The Supreme Court put our citizens at risk without a thought, and they did it virtually. And I don't even know if I could, if I could read the dissent or the reasoning. I haven't even took the time to read, what they wrote, how they could rationalize. I mean, what again?
And yet I'm watching CNN the other night, and they're like, we have the most fair elections of any country in the world, and I'm like, right.
but even more than that, what do I call a Supreme Court justice who would put people at risk knowingly? Is that a psychopath? Is that a which is it, a sociopath or a psychopath?
I'd consider it a sociopath, because
Can we assume that they also kill small animals? Should we keep an eye on them? Should we ankle break? I mean, are they going to go out and commit some sort of mass? Well, they did. They basically were involved with mass murder, as far as we know, and nobody else is upset. And I feel crazy. Yes. I feel like I'm the only person on the planet who is we need to put the Supreme Court in jail. Is that allowed?
Yes, I was upset that night. I was upset. I was like, oh my gosh, this is insane. Because I had a friend who was actually one of the people who was helping helping people to do the votes. He was actually going to be sitting behind, and he was upset. He was mad. He's like, I cannot believe this, that, you know, because he was one of the first to report that day. He's like, well, now I actually do have to go and help. Um, and he's like, that's ridiculous. At first I thought I wasn't going to have to because the governor intervened. And now, you know, and
I would need to go and be able to scream at my therapist like this, and then my therapist go, no, Matt, you're not fucking crazy. It's the Supreme Court that's fucking crazy. You're perfectly fine. You're actually a good human being, Matt Stueck. The Supreme Court is fucking bunch of evil motherfuckers. Oh, thank you, therapist Sarah. I'll see you next week when fucking they do something horrible to the American people and no one gives a shit about. Thank God you're available to me. Thank God I have health insurance.
The country has gotten so desensitized to the way we've become, to the way we behave. I mean, it's kind of like we've got two rapists running for president.
Thank you, therapist. Can't wait for my next appointment. I feel the same way. That's all I say online, and I feel like a crazy person. But because I feel like I'm sort of being a little mean, but like, can we at least look at the allegations? Can we at least, this woman has filed a complaint with Washington, D.C. Last Thursday, she filed a complaint for the first time. So she has this is now a criminal report. So now we need to have a criminal investigation. We're not trying any pranks here. This woman has a legit complaint, concern. Where is the Me Too movement? Why is this now class warfare? And why now does Biden get a pass? I don't understand. And again, this is hard for people to believe who don't live on Facebook. But people are coming out of the woodwork into the Bernie groups. And when you bring up rape, they're like, oh, well, what the? And I lose my mind. When did rape become oh, well? After the Supreme Court? Did the Supreme Court just fucking put something in that now we're allowed to go oh, well to rape allegations? What the fuck is actually going on? And I'm like screaming at my Facebook, and I'm not gonna take it easy on these people. I'm sorry. I want this to be investigated, and I don't want you coming to me and saying, "Oh, time to vote for Biden." No, it's time for an investigation. Is what time it is. So let me ask you, as a therapist, if someone came to you and claimed that someone had raped them, no matter what year it was, what would your advice as a therapist be to that person who felt like they were raped, assaulted, etc.?
I would tell them to report it. I would say they need to report it.
To the police.
And you believe the person. You do not deny, because when somebody is saying they're being raped, you do not deny somebody. You do not tell them, oh, are you sure you were raped? You don't question them. You don't ask them what they were wearing. You don't doubt them.
So let's just go over what we just discussed. We discussed just now nobody acknowledging that a woman was raped by the Democratic lead candidate. The news is not reporting it. No supporters are saying, oh yeah, maybe we should hold this off and have an investigation. They're denying it. It's sad that Trump probably is going to be the only one who brings this out on the light, right? He's going to definitely talk about this. So he's going to be a hero at the end of the day. You're going to make this psycho a hero. He becomes he's literally the Joker. He just gets to do whatever the fuck he wants. He gets to, completely manipulate us. And then he's working with evil people too. So he was like, they're more evil than me. Let me show you how evil these guys are. So we have the rape. Then we have the Wisconsin trying to kill people, our own governments. We have rape and people trying to get murdered. And I know, and then we have them rigging an election against Bernie. So I have to cope with that, right? And then the complete lack of the whole United States to behave like compassionate and empathetic people and to stay the fuck home. We have no behavior modification. So I don't know how anybody is dealing with it. I'm very lucky, Sarah, that I have a therapist in you to talk to, but most people don't. So I don't know, should I be running out there just screaming Medicare for all? Should I look at my window and say, I'm mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take it anymore?
And I think that's why Bernie's platform spoke to so many people, is because he was speaking to decency in so many. He was speaking about actual decency and honesty and realness, and about like taking care of others. I mean, that's why his platform mattered to so many, because I mean, it was honest and it was real. I mean, we have become so corporate run and so much about competition and corruption. And it is just sickening because it's just like the norm, the everyday norm now.
And
That people
I
are just,
feel
oh,
like
well.
I feel like I'm close to where I'm just gonna start walking around and I'm just gonna be like, am I crazy? Am I crazy? Is it just me? I'm gonna start talking to myself. Am I crazy? Am I the one that's crazy? When we have a guy who raped somebody and he's running for president and no one's talking, am I crazy? Am I crazy if the Supreme Court forces their citizens to go and vote during the worst pandemic in 100 years where people can be murdered? Am I crazy? Is it me that the best candidate who was going to help all the people and had the solutions to all the problems they rigged the primary against? Am I fucking crazy?
You're not the crazy one. It's the people who consider it the norm. The people who aren't questioning our norm, they're the crazy ones.
I thank God I have you two to talk to. Thank God I have Facebook Live to stream into. I don't know how everybody else copes. It's scary. I mean, I feel like we need more coping mechanisms. I mean, legalize marijuana for God's sake. Please, for the love of God. Am I asking too much? I think I'm not. I think if you're gonna do all this horrible shit to us, let me sedate myself on a regular basis. I think that's a fair trade-off, right?
I do think they should legalize marijuana. I do think they should, though.
But they want us to suffer. That we're talking about our modern government and we're trying to decide, are they sociopaths or psychopaths? Let's figure it out. Let's go to the board. So Matt can understand how fucked up his government is. Matt doesn't understand the difference between sociopath and psychopath. So today, we're going to teach Matt to use the right words when he fucking goes after the government so he doesn't sound
Next
like...
time I'll bring my whiteboard. Yes, we'll bring the whiteboard next time and we'll go over the differences.
That would be so good. Well, everybody, thanks, Sarah. I know my time is up. And thanks again for showing up to Real Progressives. Next time we'll get a bell and go ding, and you can say, Matt, time's up. Where the fuck is that movement? Where's the fucking time's up movement? See, now I can't even do that. I can't even have you say time's up. There's no safe words. I have no safe. We need to get a safe word. Yeah. So again, thank you for showing up and trying to give me therapy. I know I'm a lot to handle. You don't even know the half of it. So again, real progress in action. We thank you. I hope again we'll do an episode next week. I always appreciate you, Sarah, putting up with me, and maybe eventually you can figure it out.
I love it. It's been fun.
Yeah. Bernie will, oh no, Bernie Pineapple. All right, thanks everybody. Good night, everybody. Thanks for showing up to Real Progressives. Real Progress in Action. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Bye.